I was slicing vegetables when she told me she didn't love me anymore. No drama. No yelling. Just a quiet, almost robotic voice from across the kitchen island. "I think I want to leave, Cashin," she said, not even looking up from her phone. "I'm not happy." For a second, I thought she was joking. We'd been together for 11 years. Shared mortgages, pets, holidays, in-laws. We built a whole life with real roots and real dirt under our fingernails. This wasn't some college romance you walk away from over morning coffee. But when I looked at her, really looked, something was missing. That little flicker in her eyes that used to soften when she said my name. Gone. Her face was unreadable, like I was a coworker or a neighbor she'd outgrown. I didn't ask why. I didn't ask who he is. I didn't even ask if we could fix this. I just nodded and said, "Okay." And that's what shocked her. She blinked. Her lips parted slightly like she had more planned. Maybe a fight, maybe a flood of explanations. But all she got from me was a clean, quiet exit. That was the moment I knew. She had expected a scene. She wanted me to fall apart, to beg, to chase her like a fool in love with a ghost. But I wasn't going to do that. Not after the last 8 months. She thought I hadn't noticed the distance, the excuses, the new passwords, the showers that lasted a little too long, and the perfume that didn't match what she used to wear. She thought I didn't feel the way her body tensed when I touched her, or the way she angled her phone away from me every time a notification lit up her screen. She thought I was still the man who trusted too much and asked too little. And maybe I had been for a while, but I had learned something brutal over the past year. Love isn't always lost in screaming matches or slammed doors. Sometimes it dies quietly during late dinners where no one speaks, during nights spent pretending to sleep beside someone who stopped being yours long ago. She thought I'd fight, that I'd unravel, that I'd beg her to stay. Instead, I slid the knife back into the block, wiped my hands on the towel and said, "Do what you need to do." I watched her face collapse just for a split second before she gathered herself, grabbed her keys and walked out like she was the one in control. But deep down, she knew. She knew she wasn't walking away from a man desperate to keep her. She was walking away from a man who had already let her go. And that was just the beginning. She didn't move out right away. No suitcase, no slammed door, just a shift in the way she moved through the house like she was already gone. Her things stayed in the closet. Her sandals still sat by the front door. But emotionally, she had packed up long before she ever said the words. I watched her float through the days like she was in someone else's life. And maybe she was. Maybe she had been living 2 lives for months. One here with me and the other somewhere I wasn't invited. She started sleeping on the far edge of the bed. She took her phone into the bathroom every time, even to brush her teeth. She kept saying she needed space, but never left. I didn't ask questions. Not anymore. I cooked dinner like always. I fed our dog, Bastion. I watered the plants. Routine was a strange kind of anesthesia. She wanted me to react. I could feel it. The way she glanced at me, waiting for some crack in my composure. For me to break down and beg her to tell me the truth. But I didn't. Not because I didn't care, but because I already knew more than she thought I did. It was a Tuesday when I saw the first box. It was small, brown, taped neatly, sitting in the corner of the living room like an unwanted guest. No label, but it had that energy, the kind of weight you feel before a storm. That was the first sign she meant it. She was preparing to leave. By Friday there were 3. I never asked where she was going. I didn't ask who was helping her. I didn't even ask if she'd come back. She watched me closely those days like a scientist studying something under glass. She needed a reaction to justify her betrayal. If I yelled, if I cried, if I begged, then she wouldn't be the bad guy. She could tell her friends he was controlling. He was cold. He never fought for me, but I gave her nothing. She started talking to herself more, muttering under her breath in the hallway. Her tone got sharp. Once she asked me if I even cared. "You haven't said a word about me leaving. Does this mean nothing to you, Cashin?" I looked up from the sink and said, "You decided that long before you told me." She didn't expect that. Her mouth opened, then closed again. She walked away without answering. That night, I found her sitting alone on the back porch, barefoot, scrolling her phone with a blank expression. There was a wine glass on the table, almost full, untouched. I opened the sliding door, stepped out, and asked quietly, "Are you waiting for him to text back?" She didn't even deny it, just looked at me with something between guilt and defiance. That was the second time I saw her mask slip. The first was the day she said she wanted to leave. I went back inside without saying another word. The next morning, she made eggs. That alone felt strange. She hadn't touched the stove in nearly 2 months. I usually handled breakfast not because I loved it, but because she always said mornings made her nauseous. But that Tuesday, the smell of butter hit me before I even stepped out of the bedroom. When I walked into the kitchen, she was already plating the food. 2 eggs, barely scrambled. A slice of toast cut diagonally like she used to do when we first got married. Her back was straight, shoulders stiff. She moved like someone doing a scene from memory. I didn't sit. I just watched. "Thought you might be hungry," she said, voice even, eyes on the plate. I nodded once, leaned on the counter. My coffee mug was still in the sink from yesterday. She noticed it too, wiped her hands, and rinsed it without saying anything. This wasn't kindness. This was panic dressed up as routine. She wanted to reset the room, control the moment. She thought maybe if she played normal hard enough, I'd offer something. Confusion, forgiveness, a question. Instead, I asked, "Are you still leaving tomorrow?" That ruined everything. Her hand paused over the mug. Her shoulders fell just a little. She didn't turn around. "I don't know," she said after a long silence. "I haven't figured everything out yet." I pulled out the stool slowly and sat across from her plate, untouched, cooling fast. I didn't touch it either. "You already have a place, don't you?" I asked, not accusing, not even curious, just a fact stated out loud. This time she did turn. "I was going to tell you. I didn't ask when," I said. "I just asked if it was ready." She looked down. Her hair fell forward, covering part of her face. That always used to make her look younger, softer. This time it made her look small. "I can stay a few more days, if you want," she added. "No, you don't need to." I stood up, walked to the sink, poured water, drank half of it, then set the glass down without looking back. Behind me, I could hear the chair shift, her fingers tapping the table edge, then the quiet drag of her plate being moved as she cleared both servings into the trash. The eggs had gone cold. She didn't say another word. I heard her car pull out of the driveway 20 minutes later. I never asked where she went, but when she came home that night, she didn't come inside right away. I watched her from the upstairs window, sitting in her parked car for nearly half an hour. Lights off, engine silent, face lit only by the glow of her phone. I wasn't curious anymore. I was simply done. And I think that was the first time she realized I wasn't going to follow her. She left a bag by the hallway door. It wasn't packed the way someone leaves home. No suitcase, no duffel, just a tote half-zipped with a sweater draped over the edge like she wasn't sure what season it was. It sat there like a question that never got asked out loud. She didn't mention it. Neither did I. We were still sharing the house, still crossing paths, still brushing teeth on opposite sides of the sink. But the language between us had changed. Not in vocabulary, but in weight. Everything we said floated in the air for too long. Everything we didn't say hit the floor like glass. That evening, she lit a candle in the living room. The same scent I once said reminded me of the cabin we stayed in for our 5th anniversary. Birchwood and smoke. She said nothing about the memory. She just lit it, sat on the floor with her legs crossed, and scrolled through her phone. The dog, our greyhound, Asher, wandered between us. He used to be hers, but lately he followed me from room to room. She noticed. "He's been distant with me lately," she murmured. I didn't respond. It was the first time she spoke that day. "I think he senses something." "He does," I said. She paused, looked up. "You think he knows I'm leaving?" "No," I said. "He knows you left already." The silence after that was not comfortable. She put the phone down slowly, like it weighed more than it should. Then she picked it back up, not to use it, just to have it in her hand, like a shield, a tether to the world she hadn't invited me into. "I was going to tell you last week," she said. "I know." She flinched at how quickly I said it. She wanted me to draw it out, wanted an opening to deliver her version of things, the script she'd rewritten too many times in her head. But I didn't offer that space. I stood up and walked toward the hallway. I stepped over the bag. "Should I move it?" she called out behind me. "No," I said without turning. "It already doesn't belong here." I slept in the guest room that night, not because I was angry, but because I'd never seen our bedroom look that unfamiliar. The hallway light was dim, flickering slightly, like it was tired of being on. I stood there brushing my teeth, facing the mirror, but watching her reflection behind me in the bedroom. She didn't know I was looking. She pulled a navy blue dress from the closet. Not one I'd ever seen before. She didn't try it on, just held it up against her body, then turned it sideways, checking the fall of the fabric. The tag was still attached, a long white rectangle flapping against the hem, the kind of tag department stores use. It still had the security thread looped through it. I watched her check herself in the mirror, smooth the front, and then pause. She held her phone up and took a photo in the reflection. Then she smiled. Not for me, not for her, for whoever was getting the picture. I spit the toothpaste into the sink and let the water run longer than necessary. Not because I cared that she knew I saw it, but because I didn't want her to think I cared at all. That silence burned worse than anything I could have said. She turned when I walked past the door. "You working late again?" she asked, voice too light. "No," I said, "just tired." She stood there holding the dress like it was proof of something. I didn't look back. That Saturday morning, she came into the kitchen wearing the same dress, hair styled like it used to be for weddings or formal events. She walked with intention, fast, heels clicking softly on the hardwood. "Do you need the car?" she asked, already grabbing the keys off the hook. "No," I said. "Okay. I'll be out for a few hours, meeting a friend." I looked at her just once, not to question, just to let the moment sit between us. "Is this the first time he sees the dress? Or just the first time you wear it?" I asked. Her mouth opened, but she didn't have a line ready. No quick deflection, no practiced outrage. She adjusted her purse strap and walked out without answering. The house held its breath after she left. I didn't move, just sat at the table with the unpaid bills, an open envelope, and a cooling cup of black coffee. The clock ticked. The dog paced twice through the hallway, then curled up beside the fridge like he knew not to ask for anything today. I wasn't angry. That feeling had drained weeks ago when I realized I was sleeping beside a performance. What I felt now was something else, a kind of cold understanding. Not revenge, not power, just a release, like the final crack in glass before it shatters on its own. 3 hours passed, then 5. When she returned, she didn't come inside right away. I saw her through the front window, sitting in the car again, this time without her phone. No scrolling, no selfies, just staring straight ahead at the garage door like it was a wall she couldn't walk through. She finally came inside around 6:30. Her heels were in her hand. Makeup smudged. No words, just that soft, guilty shuffle of someone hoping the floor won't creak. I didn't ask where she'd been. I was already past that part of the story. Later that night, I heard her crying in the master bathroom. Not sobbing, not hysterical, just those tight, breathless sounds people make when they're trying not to be heard. I walked past the door without pausing. Her regret was beginning, not because I left, but because I stayed and let her feel what it meant to be unchosen. She thought I'd explode. She thought I'd demand the truth. She thought she could blame the fallout on my reaction. But there was no fallout, only quiet, cold stillness, and it was starting to eat her alive. She moved a chair. That's how it began. Not with words, but with the sound of furniture sliding 2 inches across tile. I came downstairs and saw it. One of the dining chairs pulled out slightly, angled toward the hallway like she'd started to sit and changed her mind. The house had been undisturbed for days. Every morning, I made the same toast, drank the same coffee, folded the same blanket on the armrest. Predictability had become my shield. But now this chair. her small attempt at placing herself back into the rhythm. I didn't move it. She did the same thing with the lotion bottle in the bathroom. Left it open. Top unscrewed, like I was supposed to notice the scent. It smelled like the one she wore the day I proposed. But that felt like a different century now. She was testing me not with questions but with presence. And I refused to blink. That Thursday she cooked. Not for both of us, just for herself. One pan, one plate. She didn't ask if I was hungry. Didn't look at me as I passed by the kitchen, though she knew I was there. She ate at the island, standing, chewing too slowly, like someone pretending to be calm. I sat in the living room, flipping through a book I wasn't reading. The television was on mute. The dog was asleep between us, closer to me than her. When she finished, she left the plate in the sink. Still no words. She knocked on the door that night. The guest room door, the one she hadn't acknowledged in weeks. 2 soft knocks. Not rhythmic. Not steady. Like her hand changed its mind mid-motion. I didn't answer. She knocked again. Cashin. It was the first time she'd said my name in 12 days. I didn't move. Didn't breathe too loudly. I let the silence answer for me. She stood there a while. I heard her shift her weight, then retreat. No good night, no third knock. Friday morning, the bag was gone from the hallway, but she hadn't left. She was in the sunroom, curled up with a blanket, pretending to read. I stood by the stairs and watched the way she turned the pages too fast. Her eyes didn't scan the words. She wasn't reading. She was surviving. She looked up once and caught my gaze. And for a split second, she smiled, hopeful, light, desperate. I nodded politely and walked outside. That evening, something changed. She came into the living room and sat across from me, not beside me. She placed her phone face up on the table deliberately. There's no one else. I looked at her, not shocked, not curious. She blinked. I know you think. I don't think anything, I said. You do. I can feel it. You left before I had time to feel anything. That ended it. She stood too quickly, picked up the phone, turned it face down again, but not before I saw the name lighting up her screen. Declan. Later that night, she knocked again. Not the guest room this time. My bedroom. I don't want to leave. I didn't open the door, and she didn't stay to repeat herself. She left the front door open. Not wide, just cracked. Just enough for cold air to move through the house and for leaves to gather near the threshold. It wasn't windy. It wasn't raining. There was no reason for the door to be open unless she wanted someone to close it behind her. I didn't. It stayed that way for almost 20 minutes. I watched her from the hallway mirror. She stood by the stairs pretending to scroll through her phone, eyeing the door from the corner of her vision, waiting. I went upstairs without a word. By the time I came down 2 hours later, the door was closed, and she was gone. She came back late, carrying grocery bags she didn't need. 2 bottles of wine, a frozen lasagna she'd never liked before, a box of crackers we'd never bought in 15 years. These weren't groceries. They were gestures, weak ones. She placed them on the counter like I was supposed to ask about them. I walked past, poured water, and returned to my seat. My quiet wasn't cruel. It was simply what happened when there was nothing left to say that hadn't already been ignored. I heard her behind me. She opened the drawer where we kept the corkscrew. She didn't drink, never had. It gave her headaches. That night, she poured 2 glasses. I left mine untouched. She didn't finish hers. The next day, she made a playlist. She played it out loud, not on headphones. Songs from our early years, ones I hadn't heard in forever. Ones she used to sing off-key in the car. Especially that one autumn when we got stuck overnight on a mountain road and danced in the headlights just to stay warm. The music drifted down the hallway as I folded laundry in silence. She was resurrecting memories like they were bandages. I didn't speak. She turned up the volume. That night I heard a crash. I came downstairs and found the kitchen light on. One of the wine glasses had shattered on the tile. She was kneeling beside it barefoot, frozen, holding the pieces like they'd caught her off guard. She didn't look at me, just kept trying to sweep them together with her hands. "You're bleeding," I said calmly. "I didn't mean to drop it. I didn't ask if you meant to. She looked up. Her eyes were red, but not from pain, not from tears, from frustration, because I didn't rush to help her, didn't kneel beside her, didn't take her hand and say what she was desperate to hear. I still care. But that wasn't true anymore, and I wouldn't lie for her comfort. She went upstairs without a word. The glass stayed on the counter overnight. In the morning, it was gone. The pieces were in the trash, wrapped in a paper towel. Next to them was her phone charger, folded, packed, tucked against a zippered travel case. She hadn't left yet, but she had started to accept something. This time there would be no scene, no shouting, no bargaining, no forgiveness waiting at the door. Only her and the truth she had tried to outrun sitting beside her now at the breakfast table. She left early. I didn't hear the door close, only the quiet afterward, the kind that settles in deep. Not empty, not cold, just still. It was 7:12 a.m. I remember the numbers on the oven clock glowing faintly. The light from outside hadn't fully reached the living room yet, but I could already feel it warming the floor through the windows. I sat at the kitchen table. Her favorite mug was gone. The hallway was clear. That bag, the one that had sat like a warning for weeks, was no longer near the door. No perfume trails in the bathroom. No charger on the nightstand. No coat on the hook. She was truly gone, and I didn't feel broken. I felt awake. I took the dog for a walk. He ran ahead, tugging the leash, the way he always did when he knew I wasn't going to stop him. We passed a bakery that had just opened. The scent of cinnamon rolled through the street like an invitation. A woman walked past with a coffee in each hand. She smiled. I smiled back. Nothing more than that. Just two people sharing a moment in motion. For the first time in over a year, I realized I wasn't waiting for anything anymore. Not a text, not an apology, not a truth that would explain the unraveling. The unraveling was the truth, and I had survived it. When I got home, I opened every window in the house. Not to erase her, but to let something new in. The breeze didn't ask questions. The silence didn't ache. It just was. I found myself humming, not to fill the quiet, but because I didn't mind it. I made breakfast for one, took my time, washed the plate. No shaking hands, no pit in my chest, just routine returning without needing to please anyone else. A week later, her name popped up on my phone. Just once. It was a single message. Do you think we could ever talk again? I stared at it for a while. Not with anger, not with pain, just calm. I didn't reply, not because I was punishing her, but because I didn't need anything from her anymore. That was the difference between us. She had left for something she thought was better. I stayed and found something she never did. Peace. The world didn't end. The sky didn't fall. The love didn't win. But neither did the grief. She thought I'd chase her. She thought she'd hear the echo of my voice calling her back. But all she heard was the sound of the door closing and me quietly moving on.